Hello everyone. Razorblade Mango here. And today I have the homie Richard on the channel for not the first time since our Bayonetta video, but the first discussion that he and I have had about anything. So, first things first, how are you doing today, Richard? I hope you're doing well, man.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been crazy at work, but I'm glad to have the day off today.
Yeah. Tuesdays and Wednesdays, having those days off are fun just because like Tuesdays you could do like Taco Tuesday. They got the discount shit at the movies, and then if you ever need to do errands, you can just run out and do them and not have to worry about the weekend rush. It's awesome. I love having weekdays off. I don't know how anyone, unless you have like a family, obviously, I don't know how anyone can have weekends off and enjoy them. I guess I'm just one of those weirdos that likes having weekdays off work.
No,
So
yeah, I don't
yeah,
blame you.
but we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the Last of Us TV show. The path to getting The Last of Us to another medium has been rocky because I know they've wanted to do a movie for a long time now, but it never quite got off the ground. And then finally, PlayStation now has this new initiative called PlayStation Productions where they are seemingly hell bent on taking all their big properties to another medium via TV show or a movie. Before we get into the TV show, I guess I just want to ask what is your, just briefly, what is your history with The Last of Us?
Yeah, so thing is that I my first time playing The Last of Us was actually on PS4. The PS4 era, I think,
Mhm.
was like the era when I finally decided to like check out I guess the PlayStation brand as
Mhm.
well and to explore I guess anything third party at the time because obviously like I was coming from because I was also always a Nintendo person. I
Yeah.
mean, even during the Wii 360 PS3 era, all I had was a Wii, so I didn't get a chance to play any of the big titles that were coming to PS3 or 360. I started playing The Last of Us on PS4. That was my
Mhm.
first time playing it. It was one of the first few titles I bought alongside. I remember I bought in it was Injustice
That was my
and
first PS4 game as well.
yeah, it was that because I wanted to play that as well. And then and then and then it was The Last of Us because I heard good things about it. I was like, this is something I need to play.
Mhm.
And I guess because I knew Naughty Dog was like one of the best developers in terms of like launching PlayStation exclusives. So I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I'll play this. I play it and I loved it the first time I played it.
Mhm.
I played it maybe twice so far already, and I still enjoyed it the last time I played it. It was like leading up, it was like around the time when part 2 was coming out. And to this day, I still enjoy it. I played part 2. I loved it. I still prefer part 1 more, but I still enjoyed part 2.
As far as The Last of Us as a franchise, I grew up a PlayStation baby. So throughout my whole life, I've had a keen interest in PlayStation and their exclusives. And The Last of Us at the time was just yet another one that was like, wow, this looks really good. Because at the end of the PS3 era, the second half of the PS3 era is when PlayStation really started to come into their own as far as funding their own big exclusives for PlayStation. Because they've had, obviously, during the PS1, PS2, early PS3 era, they've had their own self-funded games and self-published games like Sly Cooper, like Jack and Dexter, Ratchet and Clank, God of War, Twisted Metal, Gran Turismo, all the famous ones. But it wasn't really until the second half of the PS3 era that they started to double down more on that and started buying more studios. And Naughty Dog at that point was starting to become, at the time, probably their most important studio because with Uncharted being a massive success and now The Last of Us, I would argue that the original Last of Us might be the most important game in PlayStation's catalog of titles. It might be because
Mhm.
it is the game that influence their direction as far as what kind of games they wanted to make and how they would go about sustaining their business over the next generation. Where, because of the massive success of The Last of Us, they then decided to, we should make more of these. We should make more big, high quality, single player adventure, like action adventure games. And that was kind of their template for, for better or for worse throughout the PS4 generation. And that is ultimately what led them to being the big powerhouse that they are now. And even to this day, they you can still feel the influence of things from The Last of Us, like on God of War, like Horizon, Spider-Man. There's quite a bit of influence from The Last of Us as far as how it approaches narrative, how it approaches character interaction, gameplay. The Last of Us has its tentacles in a lot of different modern PlayStation IP. As far as it becoming a TV show or a movie, I've always been dubious of that, because I am somebody who, I don't look forward to a game becoming a movie or a TV show. I kind of got over that a long time ago. If it's a video game, part of a video game's impact is you interacting with it. So if you take away the interactivity and you make it a movie or a TV show, I feel like it's lessened, even if the story is great, because part of that investment in the story is you interacting with the world. It's you. You are Joel going on this journey with Ellie. And when you take that away and you watch it from a more like passive viewpoint, like a movie or a TV show, I feel like that runs the risk of diluting the story and diluting the impact.
I do know where you're coming from, because I did feel like that loss of, like, I guess, connection I felt compared to when I was playing with the game, because within the game, like, I did feel connected to them more. As in the TV show, like, it's like I already know these characters, so it's like I know what to expect, but I didn't feel that strong sense of connection that I did when I played the game.
Well, I was also dubious about the show because I'm in general still a little dubious about this PlayStation Productions initiative, because, like, we have the Uncharted movie, which I thought was just really corporatized, and it just felt like it was on autopilot the whole time. It felt like a movie that was made by a boardroom of suits rather than a team of passionate people. And then I didn't like the trailers for The Last of Us. I thought the show, it looked cheap. It just didn't look all that high quality to me as far as the visuals. I saw the trailers, like I said, and I just thought, no, this does not look very good. I'm not really feeling it from what I'm seeing. And then I saw the first episode, or we watched it, and I liked it, surprisingly.
Yep, I was surprised too. Like, I was like, this is surprisingly good.
Yeah.
Everyone was shocked.
Well, I was more shocked just because I think there was a lot of excitement for the show, and I understand why, because a lot more, and despite how derogatory this may sound, a lot of normies who are not video gamers now know what The Last of Us is, because PlayStation is obsessed with being this global brand now. So I saw a lot of people that don't normally play video games be excited for The Last of Us, and I was kind of like, okay. And then I watched it, and I actually liked it. That was pretty good. And then you and I watched most of the episodes. There were only maybe only one that you missed, I think.
Yeah, I saw it on my own because I had to work.
And then I've had a very weird relationship with this, at least this first season of the show, where to me it's and I'm almost glad we're doing this late. It's given me more time to think about it, but I'm very mixed on the show overall. Like, if I look at it as far as the episodes themselves, how I would rate each individual episode, the good outweighs the bad, or in this case, the mediocre. One of the big reasons is what you pointed out earlier, was that lack of connection to what's going on. And that is probably my main issue with the show. Ironically, the one relationship that I had the hardest time getting attached to or coming to terms with was the relationship between Joel and Ellie. I thought every other relationship in this show, in this first season, was very well done and developed pretty well, acted pretty well, except Joel and Ellie, which I thought was so strange. All the others I thought were good. Like, I believed Bill and Frank more than I believed Joel and Ellie in this show. I don't think it's Pedro Pascal's fault because he's a good actor.
No.
I think it more just has to do with the writing and the pacing of the show being compromised because of other elements. And I'm just going to say it, outside of the final episode and the Left Behind episode, I did not think Bella Ramsey was all that good as Ellie.
I mean, yeah, I didn't like you said, I didn't find that connection as well either within Joel and Ellie as I did with the game. But I think I felt like what was able to like get us through the show was because we played the game already. So it's like we know what's gonna happen to them already. But obviously, like in terms of seeing that relationship grow, like we saw it grow better in the game because the game is much longer than the actual show. At least I think it is. Is it?
Yeah. Well, it cuts
obviously, but
yeah. But it also cuts out a lot of key development scenes between Joel and Ellie in order to make room for all this other stuff that I thought was totally unnecessary. Like, for example, it cuts out a lot of the Bandit Town sequence, like a lot of that, and it cuts out almost everything in Bill's Town, and that to me is like key development between Joel and Ellie. So they cut that out in favor of a story that, while great, didn't really fit the narrative overall. And then they cut out a lot of the Bandit Town stuff to focus on a new character who is the bandit leader and her thing, and that was just totally unnecessary and boring. Instead of Joel and Ellie, we just get all this like random side stuff that just, as a whole, when I really sit back and I look at it, I don't think it was worth it to expand the universe in these ways in the long run, because it compromises and takes away from what should be the core relationship, Joel and Ellie.
No, yeah, I agree in that. As far as the acting goes, though, I mean, I was fine with Bella Ramsey playing as Ellie. So, I mean, I didn't, at least I don't remember seeing anything bad about their acting. I mean, to be fair, I mean, I know you played the game more recently.
Yes, I played part 1 back in September again. So Last of Us Part 1 is still pretty fresh in my mind as far as the game goes.
Yeah, because the last time I played part 1 was around the time when it was like near part 2's release.
Oh shit! So it's been like 3 years since.
Yeah, it's been 3 years since I last played it. I mean, I know you didn't like the Left. Did you like the Left Behind?
The DLC or the episode?
The episode.
Yeah, I really liked the episode.
Yeah, I liked that episode. I thought that one. I thought that one.
She's very good in that. Like my thing with Bella Ramsey is that I think she's a lot better when she's quiet. I think she can play those more inner turmoil, quiet fury notes much better than she can play the outbursts of emotion. When she's like yelling at Joel or when she's yelling at David, she just sounds like, no, I don't. She's not intimidating. It's not convincing to me. She's no Ashley Johnson in that department. That's another thing too, is that if we're gonna continue with acting, is like, I thought some of the performances were kind of bad. Not Bella Ramsey. Bella Ramsey was more of a mixed bag, but I thought some were just straight up bad. Like, I thought the guy who played David kind of sucked. I thought he was pretty bad.
You
I
thought that
thought
was bad?
I thought David was pretty bad. I thought Troy Baker outacted him, and he like barely he. That's like a pattern when Troy Baker had a cameo in this as David's right hand man. I thought Troy Baker outacted that guy, and then when Joel's brother in the game, he gets a cameo as Kathleen's right hand man, the bandits in Kansas City. I thought he outacted her, like he was like acting circles around her, and I thought she was terrible. I thought she was like her and David were like the worst performances in the season. But they give all this attention to like Kathleen, and it's like who fucking cares? It's like who cares? Like she
Wait,
sucks. She's dumb.
Who's Kathleen again? Kathleen's
Exactly. Yeah, Kathleen is that leader of the gang, that army in Kansas City. What's supposed to be the bandit town.
Oh, the bandit. Oh, when whom Sam and Henry were trying to run away from.
That's who.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I remember her.
I thought she was bad. And then Scott Shepard, who's David, I thought he was pretty bad too.
I will say though, I don't think they needed to change Sam and Henry's background. they just changed. I was like, it
didn't add much in the end.
I was just like, because in the game they're just two survivors. That's all they are.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Like everybody else is just trying to get by, just like Joel and Ellie were.
It's just,
but
there's so many situations in this show where it's like, did you really need to change that? And it doesn't really change it for the better in some cases. I think Sam and Henry, as far as their relationship, I thought was really strong, but their connection to like Kathleen and this militia group, I thought that was unnecessary.
Yeah, that it was.
And then I know the most controversial episode is easily the Bill and Frank one, because it's like 90% of it is all new material. Actually, 95, probably like 98% of it is all new material.
The whole thing was new material.
Yeah, I think the only thing that was similar was them getting in the car at the end and driving off.
The car at the end, and oh yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
that is it.
Really about it. And the rest of it's all new material, which I'll say this, as an isolated episode, I loved it. I thought that was the best episode in this season. Like they to me, they shot their wad like really early with that episode. Because as an isolated story, I thought the Bill and Frank one was outstanding. And it was like easily the most emotionally impactful one out of this whole season. But again, it's at the cost of time we could have spent developing the relationship between Joel and Ellie. But instead, they go and develop Frank and Bill, which if Frank and Bill were there while Joel and Ellie were there, that's one thing. But to have Joel and Ellie not even meet Bill, like Bill is just like, oh, I'm dead. Here's the keys. Here's the letter. There you go. I'm dead. I was like, oh, okay. But at the time when that episode came out, I didn't really think much of it. I was like, oh, I like all these changes. This is interesting. But again, as a whole, when I look back on it now that the season is over, I thought it was a mistake, despite being the best episode in the show for me.
It's like this show was made for like people who played the game better.
I'd argue it's more for people who have not played the game, actually. I would argue this show is more for people who are not familiar with PlayStation's stuff, and then they play it, and then they go out and they're like, now I want to get into this, and they go buy a PS5, and they buy The Last of Us Part 1, they buy The Last of Us Part 2, and that's how they get into it, because they saw the TV show. That's ultimately what PlayStation's end goal is with these TV shows and these movies.
No, yeah, it is. And
they're gateway drugs. They're basically gateway drugs.
Yeah, which is fine. I think people should have the right.
If it's good, if it's good, I have less of a problem with that. if it's crap, like how I think the God of War TV show will go, then I have more of a problem with it.
Oh yeah, of course. Of course, yeah. I know where you come from. And keep in mind, it's not just PlayStation getting into movies. A lot of
Oh
other
God, yeah.
companies are doing this now.
I
It's
will
not
say
just
that despite my problems with the Last of Us TV show, I think it is leagues ahead of that fucking Halo TV show or any of
also
the or most of the animated stuff that's come to Netflix.
in some aspects, in some of the episodes in The Last of Us, I feel like some stuff, like you can understand it only if you played the game. In some aspects of it, but not entirely everything. Like obviously, it's still appealed to also like the normies or
Mm-hmm.
non gamers,
Yeah,
but
in some cases, I think it does too much, assuming that you've played the game and you can kind of fill in the gaps in emotional resonance thanks to the writing. Kind of, it's like assuming you're going to fill in the gaps yourself, because the writing certainly, as an isolated thing, I don't think the writing does a great job of giving you a reason to care about the central relationship between Joel and Ellie. Between the gap where they go to Bill's town and they get the car, to when they have that argument at the dam, the dam town, where it's the famous, the argument where Ellie tells Joel, like, Maria told me about Sarah, and then of course Joel, he goes like, Ellie, you're treading on mighty thin ice, and they have the whole, she says the I'm sorry, Joel, that you've lost your daughter, but I've lost people too. And Joel, you have no idea what loss is. By the time we get to that scene in the game, there's already been a lot of interaction and development between Joel and Ellie.
yes.
And in the show, by the time it gets to that point, it feels like a lot is missing in between.
Yes.
And it never really earns that scene.
Yes.
And I don't even think it's acted as well in the show as it is in the game.
That is true. I agree on that part.
And they changed some stuff around too. They changed like one specific line of dialogue in that exchange in the show too, where Ellie just flat out asks Joel, do you care about me? And Joel goes, yes. And we don't need that in the game. We don't need Joel to flat out say, yes, I care about you, because we've had that time with them to feel it. This is another core problem I have with the show, is that it's a lot of telling me things, but not showing them to me and not making me feel it in a convincing way.
Speaking of which, I remember there was one scene that I remember you thought was very pathetic as well.
Me?
Yeah,
Okay.
I remember looking back at it, it's definitely not the best cutscene. It's the the iconic fall that Joel has.
Oh yeah. Where they don't even have it in the show.
No, they say he just gets stabbed quietly.
Yeah, that was lame.
It
would have certainly been a lot more, visually interesting than Joel just getting like quietly stabbed. It's so lame, and they rush through that entire. That's again, they don't have enough time to properly pace this, so they have to rush through that entire university scene. Going back to one of my core issues with the first season of the show, I mentioned that I felt like it was a lot of telling and not showing, and that to me is starting to become a problem with a lot of modern entertainment, where they feel the need to overwrite characters and have them be overly talkative and overly emotional. And one of the things I always really liked about Joel from the game is that a lot of what I get out of Joel, a lot of the character tics and emotions I get out of him, they're very subtly done most of the time. The only time in the game that he really shows this outpouring of emotion is in the beginning when his daughter dies, sadly. But the rest of the game, he's very like reserved and a lot of his emotions are he like keeps them stuffed down. A lot of the moments where you see where Joel cracks, they're very quick and they're very subtle. And there's a lot that Joel is able to get across in the game that's done with a single sentence and a look. And I think that is far more impactful than Pedro Pascal being given these like dumb additional lines like, "Oh, yes, I do care about you" to Ellie, or him having these like dumb these panic attacks, which I don't need Joel having panic attacks to understand that he's scared of losing Ellie. Like, I understood that from the game. I don't need this like long Oscar speech to Tommy about how he's afraid of failing Ellie, like he failed Sarah and Tess, and how he's like borderline, he's like breaking down into tears in front of Tommy, and I'm just like, no, dude, like we don't need this. We don't need these like overly talkative, overly emotional characters that like spill out everything that they're thinking and feeling. Like, I don't need this in entertainment. I am not a baby. I don't need these characters to spoon feed me their emotions. Like, I get it. I can look at a character and see like subtle facial animation and subtle movement and how the way they say certain things, and I'll get it. To compare it to another Naughty Dog thing, one of my all-time favorite scenes in a video game is in Uncharted 4. And it's a moment when Drake and Elena are in the pirate kingdom of Libertalia, and they're exploring it. And they come across the big like dining room where all the pirates are, and they're dead. Their corpses are there. And there's a moment where Nate is like, he goes on this little like, not rant, he goes on this little like diatribe about, you know, what happened in this room. And he's thinking about all the history that's going on. He's like giddy about it. He's excited. And you can see the camera doesn't focus on him, but the camera goes to Elena's face. And you can see this very subtle like look where she's like looking at Drake, her husband. And the look that she has on her face, there's not a word spoken that indicates what she's feeling. But in her eyes and in her subtle facial animation, you can tell that she's looking at Drake, and it's a mix of she's realizing why she fell in love with him, but it's also this mix of frustration almost that he can't move on from this. And it's almost like her realizing in that moment what their relationship means and what his passions are in life and how their relationship needs to improve. And that scene is wonderfully done. It is amazing. It really is amazing. It's one of the most amazing examples of subtle storytelling and characterization and facial animation. It's brilliant in this one little scene. It's not some giant explosive action scene. It's not some giant monologue. It's just, again, it's a look and one line of dialogue, and it's beautiful. And that's what I felt like they should have done more in The Last of Us TV show, because it's a visual medium. It's not a fucking book. I don't need it telling me all these things. I can look at this. I can experience it for myself. I didn't get a lot of that out of the show. At least in most episodes, I didn't get a lot of that. I got a lot of like patronizing, like spoon feeding, a lot of like, oh, he's thinking this way, or she's thinking that way, and this is how we get here to this scene. And it's like, I don't need this. I just want subtle storytelling. That's what The Last of Us does really well. It's the subtle character development, subtle interactions between people, little moments, little gestures, little unspoken things, and that's where I feel like the game succeeds over the TV show.
Yep. And I still prefer the video game over the TV show.
Oh, absolutely.
And I will do 100%.
Another thing that bothered me about the TV show was that I thought it was very weak as far as its violence. The Last of Us is an extremely violent video game. There's a lot of like Like people are brutally killed. There's moments where there's like exploding bodies and gore. There's like tons of violence in The Last of Us.
Oh yeah.
And
Stabbing.
stabbing and shooting people in the nuts and choking people out and bashing people's brains out and shit. And that's just the first game.
Slamming people's heads to the wall and
Yes.
watching them bleed out.
Shotgunning people directly in the face to where like their viscera explodes all over the floor. Like it's a fucking violent video game. And then they translate it to the TV show on a network on HBO that is famous for having really adult content, especially with violence, like Game of Thrones, like Rome, like Deadwood, like The Sopranos, and yet it is so muted in so many cases as far as the violence goes that it's frustrating. It's like, guys, you are an MA-rated show on HBO. What is the deal with you guys avoiding brutal violence so much? What is that?
You might as well just put it on Disney Plus at this point.
I don't know about that, but
okay, I'm kidding around about that.
But but you get what I mean. It's like there's an example where there's that scene in the last episode where he's being led away by Marlene's team, and in the game when he disarms the guy and tortures him for Ellie's information, like where she is in the hospital, he's like, I don't have time for this. And he shoots the guy in the nuts, like point blank in the nuts with his gun. And then the guy is like, he doesn't talk quick enough. So Joel shoots him again in the nuts. And then he finally talks and Joel shoots him in the head, killing him. In the show, when he disarms the guy and points the gun at him, he's just like, I don't have time for this. And he just shoots the guy in the head. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why aren't you just torturing this guy for information? Like, why did you kill him? It doesn't make any sense. And then they also don't have the part where he gets shot in the nuts. And I was looking forward to that part. And then in the bandit town, when they're killing people, a lot of it is off screen. And it's so annoying. Like when Kathleen goes back to that cell to kill the doctor, she shoots him and it's all off screen. There's the part where Joel and Ellie are fighting the bandits. It's like practically bloodless, the violence. And then when Joel goes to kill the bandit, it like cuts away to Ellie, and we just hear it in the background that Joel's killing the guy. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like why are you so against showing violence in the show? Like what is it? What's the deal? What's going on? And I don't know why they did that. It's just such a weird creative decision.
Let's not forget the lack of infected in the show as well.
Yes, which that to be honest, I was less bothered by that than some people. I was more just kind of like, that's weird that the infected have way less of a presence in this show than in the game.
To me, it's like, how do you get them to work in a TV show? I mean, because in a game, keep in mind, there's different types of infected.
Well, they show all the types in the show.
I know, but I know there's the clickers, the bloaters, the
runners. Yeah.
Okay,
they're all there.
Okay, they're all there.
I just think the budget. I think the budget just started to run out towards the end because they clearly saved. They clearly had a lot of money, and they spent it on 2 big sequences with the infected. They spent it on three. They spent it on the clicker scene in the second episode, which was very good, and the clicker makeup looked great. The prosthetics, it did look great.
The acting did too. It was very
whoever
accurate.
They got to play the clickers and they designed the voices, it was fantastic. And then they did it on that group of running zombies in the second episode, and then they have the big climactic moment in the 5th episode where they have the bloater come out. So I feel like they used all the budget for those 3 sections of big zombie action, and then the rest of it was like, fuck, well, we don't have anything left. And they just did every excuse not to fucking have zombies in the show anymore.
It's like they were on a limited budget. Like the show was very limited.
I'm curious how they're gonna do the Rat King in either like season 2 or 3.
I'm curious how they're gonna do the other the other types of infected, the stalker and the what's the other one? The because I remember they introduced two new infected in part
Shit.
two.
Yeah, I know. Fuck. I'll have to look it up, but
The stalker, I don't know how they would get that one to work because in the game, the stalker like hides. Like you don't know when it's coming at you. Like you have to look for it.
I was surprised they didn't do the stalker when they go underground to the classroom.
Yeah, well, they're probably not going to introduce that till the next season. But
Yeah.
in the show, I would assume how they would do it is, I guess they're in a dark room and it's just roaming around somewhere. I guess.
They could treat them like the velociraptors in like Jurassic Park and just have three of them in the room, and Joel and Ellie have to kind of like fight them off or something.
Okay, that I can see, but I don't know what the other one was called. I forgot the name of the
The
other.
Shamblers.
What's the Shambler? The Shamblers?
The Shambler is the one that throws out that cloud of acid.
Okay. Yeah, no, that one's very easy then.
It wasn't too bad in The Last of Us Part 2.
The Rat King, I feel like that's gonna cost a lot of money to
That's
do.
that's gonna be really interesting to see, because I liked some of the CGI in the show, but a little bit of it did look pretty rough. I was surprised by how good the giraffe scene looked. I was expecting that to look like comically fake, but it looked
Like
pretty
CGI.
good.
Wait, was that CGI
Yeah,
or
it
was
was
that?
CGI. I was clearly a CGI giraffe, but it looked really good, and I was surprised that it looked really good. The other bit of like big CGI that they did with the bloater, I thought that looked pretty good too. Another thing with the violence is that like they have that bit where the bloater they pay homage to the game where they have that kill animation where the bloater like grabs Joel and like tears his fucking face in half from the game. They have that, like they have the guy that is Kathleen's right-hand man where the bloater gets him, but it like blurs it in the background to where like you can kind of see what's going on, but not really. And I was like, oh man, like again, it's like dumbing down the violence in this show.
They're not showing the gore.
No, they're not. I don't know what they have against just showing gore in this show. They show it occasionally, but you see it in the beginning of the 5th episode too, where they're like brutally killing the military at the beginning. And I thought that was pretty cool. I was like, finally, some brutal violence in this show. It's about damn time. Yeah, it's just with these episodes, it's just frustrating because to me it was just very inconsistent. The weird thing is that a lot of it was the odd numbered episodes that I really liked, and then the even numbered ones I didn't. So it was like every week it was like up and down, up and down, up and down until it ended. And thankfully it ended with an odd numbered episode, so it was good. But it was so baffling, like that, like episodes 2, 4, 6, and 8 I thought were like easily the weakest ones. And then episodes like 3, 5, 7, 9 I thought were some of the stronger ones, like the strongest ones.
Yep, which also, now that you mention that, it brings me to another concern I have with the next few seasons.
Okay.
They said part 2 was going to be more than one season.
Yeah, which I think is a good thing.
Which is good, which brings me to another thing. Yet we all know what happens to Joel in part 2.
Sure, yeah.
So
everyone knows by now.
Well, not the
most people know by now.
Not the normies, because
no.
I know one casual fan. Like she loved the show, but I really doubt she played.
You're not going to tell her that Joel gets beaten to death with a golf club.
I'm not gonna say that. I didn't tell her. I didn't tell her that, but
okay.
In my head, I'm just like, oh boy, I can't wait till you and everybody else sees what happens. I know when it gets shown, the normies and the casual audience are gonna erupt as well.
See, I don't think they're going to do that. I'm in a unique position with Last of Us Part 2 when it gets developed into a TV show, where I feel like the hard part has already been passed. They've already done part 1. To me, part 1 is a lot more difficult to adapt than part 2. Part 2, they could very easily get away with changing a lot of stuff. They could still adhere to some of the structure of part 2, but if they change certain things around, they're gonna have to, because I don't think part 2, the way it is structured in the video game, I don't think it works as a TV show. Unless they were to really try that, then maybe, but I don't think it would work. Not as something that's going to be spread out over 2 seasons or more.
No, yeah.
But as its own, as like, if they change the structure of it and they give more development to like Abby and stuff like that, I think it could work. You have a lot more room to play around with part 2's story and not run the risk of pissing people off. But with part 1, because it's a lot more revered than part 2, they've already cleared that hurdle of trying to find that balance with part 1 with a much more revered story by sticking into that middle ground between being faithful and trying new things. They've already done it. So now, and I'm in a weird position too, where I don't care one way or another what they do with part 2. I don't care if they leave it exactly the same as it is in the game, because I love The Last of Us Part 2 story, and I don't care if they change it, because I don't mind. I would be very interested in seeing something different than what's in part 2.
Because Joel and Ellie's relationship kind of feels rushed in part 1 in the first season.
Yes.
We're still not going to get to... I feel like the casual audience isn't going to get to experience that deep relationship between them, because, you know, in part 2, Joel dies. And yeah, we still see him in part 2, but only in flashbacks for the most part. But all those flashbacks, like, while it does show some stuff between them, it doesn't show like the hurdles that they both went through.
No.
In the first game. Majority of the time when they go out it's when they're running errands for the most part, because, you know, they're running this civilized town now.
And then I would disagree slightly. There are some parts in the first season of the show that they do show the struggle between Joel and Ellie, that they do show some of the relationship growing. I just don't think it's enough. If they were smart, I feel like they could use season 2 at least to make it so those flashbacks that are in The Last of Us Part 2, you could build a story around that before Joel dies. Sometime maybe at the end of the second season or the beginning of the third season. You could take those flashbacks from part 2, like the part where they go to the museum, and that could be a whole episode. That could be a whole really good episode with just the two of them. You could do that. You could do the part where they're in the building and they find the family, with the Firefly logo. You could have the part where Ellie runs off to the hospital to search for the records that reveal what really happened. You could do all sorts of things with part 2, and that's why I'm interested to see what they do with it, because they could very easily change it around and have it be they could improve it compared to part 2 in the game.
But also, like, where do you think it will end for season 2? Because, you know, they said part 2 was going to be multiple seasons. So where do you feel like season 2 will end? How do you think they'll split it?
I think if I were to make a prediction, I think season 2 will end with the death of Joel. And then part 3 will be... Season 3 will be the dual story between, like, Ellie going out for revenge and Abby story. But they need to establish Abby at some point in the second season. Like, they need to... Because we see Dina in the first season of The Last of Us, like, very briefly as a cameo.
Yeah, it was a tease for us fans, for the people who played the games already.
Yeah, and then so Dina will be a part of it. So we'll see development between Dina and Ellie, and then we'll get the breakdown. We'll get the breakdown of the relationship between Joel and Ellie, I think, in the second half of season 2. You know that there's that scene at the end of Last of Us Part 2 where Ellie and Joel kind of begin to reconcile after being estranged for a long time. That scene is kind of the big exclamation mark at the end of The Last of Us Part 2. That's the one where it puts a lot of what happened with Ellie in Part 2 into context. And it kind of, that's the point where a lot of the themes come together beautifully. They can't omit that for a TV show. And this is where I'm like, okay, this is where my apprehension about video games being turned into TV shows and movies comes in, because they're gonna have to change things at some point to make it work as a TV show. But what I love about The Last of Us Part 2 is that non-linear narrative, because I think it's really unique for a video game. But it would not work as a TV show. And I'm concerned that the impact will be lessened because of that. And that's on top of the impact already being lessened from the first season. So
keep in mind, we're also going to have a ton of new characters.
Yes, we will.
Part 2 introduces so many characters.
A lot, yeah. So yeah.
And on top of that, as far as the prediction goes, like where I think it's gonna end, I feel like season 2 would end like around the time when it cuts to Abby, because you know that segment that happens like when it cuts to Abby
at the beginning.
No, not in the beginning. It's the
when you're doing the halfway mark.
The halfway mark. I think it's when it cuts out to where
it cuts to that flashback of Abby and her dad tending to that zebra.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like it would cut to that. I feel like I feel like that would like be the beginning of season 3, because that's when like people would get introduced to Abby.
Maybe.
I don't know, or maybe
I don't know.
Make it 3 seasons long. I'd be shocked if they do it that long.
Thank God they're not having us write this, because I wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know either. It's weird because like they're trying to turn this whole thing into a show, but like if we look at other stuff, other video game adaptations, like the Sonic movie, like the Sonic movies,
that's its own thing.
Yeah, it's their own original story, but they're taking in lore from the games and making it into something different.
Well, it's the same thing. Yeah, it's the same thing with the Castlevania TV show and Arcane on Netflix, which is from League of Legends. They're taking characters and elements from the games, and then, or in case of the game League of Legends, but crafting an original story out of it. I guess that's another question I have. Would you have preferred that with The Last of Us over this trying to adapt the story of the game into a TV show? Because I would be curious to see what they could do with an original story and turn that into a TV show.
Like, yeah, I mean, that'd be kind of interesting.
Like what they're doing with the Factions 2 video game, the upcoming Factions 2 video game, where it's gonna be an original story with all new characters.
Wait, original story?
Mm-hmm. It's set in San Francisco, so it has to be an original story.
I thought it was just gonna be like a purely online multiplayer game.
It's gonna be. I assume it's gonna be like how The Division is, where The Division has its own story with characters, and it will give you the option to play it either solo or with friends. I assume that's how it's gonna be.
Okay, if it's gonna be that way, like where you could play with friends, then that's something I'd be down for, actually.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if the Last of Us TV show was like that, where it was an original story, would you be more interested in seeing that compared to them adapting the story of the first 2 games?
Probably not.
No?
Because it's like, how can you make it different? I mean,
well, they would have less baggage to work with if they did not have to adapt Joel and Ellie's story. It's definitely the smarter thing to do, because it's the less risky thing to do, because there's already that established connection to Joel and Ellie. But I would have been curious to see what they could have done with an original story in this world, and take that as a TV show. Like what they did with Castlevania, like what they're doing with Arcane. I would love to see something like that.
Or maybe just explore different, like make up a new character and have it set in the Last of Us universe.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, an original character.
Like that. Yeah, okay, but something like that, that'd be interesting.
So, overall, I'm just mixed on the show when I look at it as just isolated episodes. Like if I just looked at each episode and I grade them just based on like the isolated episodes. Like I said, the good outweighs the mediocre. But when I look at the show overall, taken as a whole, the season at least, I'm a lot more mixed on it because I feel like it sacrifices a lot of important moments in the core relationship between Joel and Ellie, which should be the focus, which should be the main important thing. And they sacrifice that in favor of developing other parts of the world, other additional characters, some newer ones that did not need to be there, and some that I felt like got outacted by their sidekicks. So
That's funny.
So yeah, I guess overall, if I were to give The Last of Us part one season, whatever the fuck, Last of Us season 1 a grade, I guess I would say, is there a halfway mark between B minus and C plus? Is there some kind of
No.
halfway mark? No. All
If
right,
you want to say B, I feel like B minus is a bit more fair.
yeah, okay, that's true. So I'll go with a B minus because, like I said,
Okay.
the good episodes do outweigh the mediocre ones. It's just when those mediocre ones hit, boy, is it frustrating.
No, yeah. There was only one really weak episode.
I think you and I
We
shared
saw.
the same.
Yeah,
Same sentiment.
it was on that episode with the when they introduced the group.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
bandits.
that was the weakest
Yeah,
episode.
that was the only
Like,
episode I would go so far as to say was like
yeah,
kind of bad.
no, because we were watching it, and then after it ended, I was just like, this was the weakest episode.
Yeah, that sucked.
I couldn't explain. I didn't know what it was. Like, I just knew that it was the weakest episode I've
It,
seen.
it just felt like such a waste of time.
I
And
don't.
so like that was the part of the game being translated into the show that I was looking forward to the most was the bandit town sequence, and they just
It's,
totally fucked that up, and I was so disappointed with that. It's
yeah,
so
it
weird that
was.
they nailed other elements of the game, like the relationship between Sam and Henry and the whole Left Behind stuff. I thought all that was great. And then the part with the bandits, which should be a lot which should be a lot easier to pull off because it doesn't require any like big investment into characters. They fucked that up. I don't know how that happened, but there you go.
No,
So
yeah. The Sam and Henry part, that's like my favorite part of the game.
that
I
was
think
great.
it's probably the one segment of the game that I remember the most.
Yeah, their acting
Probably
was great in the show.
no, yeah. It was. It was. They did handle
Yeah,
Sam getting infected very differently. It's like in the game Ellie didn't know,
yeah.
but in the
He never
show,
tells her.
yeah, but in the show like he tells her and she tried to heal him with her because she tried putting her blood into his to see if like
Uh,
it would heal him.
I
In the end,
wonder
it
if,
didn't.
and this is part of the storytelling that I do like. They're like little bits of like some of the newer elements that I do like, and that was one of them where Ellie does trying to like rub her blood on his infected wound. And I like that we don't know if she did that because she truly believed that it would heal him or that she did that just to make him feel better and like kind of ease his mind to go to sleep. We never know that, but I assume it's more that she thought it was going to heal him because she feels more guilty about it when he dies because she leaves like the Etch-a-Sketch there and it says I'm sorry. I like that they never spell it out as to what she was thinking in that moment. There's never a moment later on where she says like, "Oh, I thought my blood would heal him." Or at least I don't remember a part like that.
No, she didn't say that.
Yeah,
I
I
feel like
liked
that was
that.
her intention, but obviously,
Yeah.
I think she just felt bad that she couldn't save him, I
Another
guess.
like small little detail that I really liked was I liked in the it's an episode I don't like overall, but the part with David, I like how when they show his commune eating, he has like clearly a much bigger portion of food than everybody else does.
Mhm.
And they never acknowledge that, like they never zoom in on it or anything, like it's just there. And it's
Mhm.
just there. And I like that because that visually tells me that he's considered like of great importance in this community, and he's like the top dog of it. And I like that they visually demonstrate that. Like, here's another thing. I wanted to get your take on it. I don't know how much you want to get into it, but one thing that bothered me about David that they added was that he is a religious person. And I thought, to me, like, I just thought that was really like unnecessary and corny, because it's like, look, he's already a fucking pedophilic cannibal, like crazy, like group leader. Did you really need to inject this like religious thing to him? Like, to me, it's so hokey and played out. Like, the crazy cult religious leader. It's like, come on, like it's just so it's so played out after this
like
point.
it was like some Charles Manson shit. Like,
Well,
but
it's
yeah,
more
no.
it's more just specifically the religious aspect, like that. I was like, come on, that was so unnecessary.
No, it definitely wasn't. And all the other people in the background there that were eating the cannibal,
Yeah,
they were eating the humans. I was like, they weren't, even looking back right now, I don't think they definitely were needed. I mean, he was already a cannibalist
yeah,
at that point, so it's like, I mean, maybe we didn't. I don't think we needed it.
yeah.
But
Well, we didn't need those scenes of him interacting with the town, because again, it sacrificed a moment where Ellie and David fought infected in that hut. It got rid of that moment in order to just have a moment where like David like prays he preaches to the choir, and then he like slaps some little girl and they eat. I don't know. Like, I didn't give a shit that they're like, I didn't need that in the game. But did you also laugh at the part where like David, again, it's this like lack of subtlety, where we already had the scene with David where he like puts his hand on Ellie's hand in the jail cell. And that's like the time in the game where, you know, it's like very obvious that he's like a pedophile. And I guess that wasn't enough in the show. We have to have a moment where when he's strangling Ellie, he's like, yeah, this struggle is my favorite part. Go ahead and scream, no one's gonna hear you. And when he's like, she's about to like rape her, basically. Like, we didn't get that in the game. Like, in the game, they didn't really feel the need to do that. In the game, when he's on top of her, all he says is like, you don't know what I'm capable of. That's basically all he says. He doesn't say anything cartoonish like yeah, the struggle is what I like. Like, we didn't need that shit in the game. I don't know why it's in the show. Again, like, they don't trust the audience to get it.
vaguely remember that, but even thinking about that, I'm just like, okay,
I just thought it was dumb. I was just like, it's so dumb.
I mean, I knew it was creepy that he said that, but I was like,
but again, it's like the showrunners don't trust the audience to get it. They have to like over explain things. They have to add dialogue where it wasn't there before, where certain things are expressed very subtly, and it's like, guys, we don't need these additions. It's okay. It's okay if a character just looks at another character with a look, or says something in the beginning very subtly, or there's a gesture. That's all we need. Show, do not tell. But The Last of Us show is like, nah, fuck that. We're gonna tell you once. We're gonna tell you 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times until you get it. Yeah, that's really all I got as far as the show.
No, yeah, that's as far as I got as well. I mean, it's also been a month since the show ended.
That's another thing too, is I don't really have any desire to watch it again. Like, I liked most of it, but I don't have any desire to really watch it right now.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. Yeah, that's the same thing with me. I feel like I would rather play the game instead more than actually watch the show again.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Because even the minor small changes, like, you know, like how the disease spreaded, I feel like that that something small like that, if you're really curious about like how it happened, I feel like that's something you can always look up on the internet very quickly.
Well, that's one of the they made changes to how the disease spread because it was airborne in the game, and in the show it's through products with flour in them. And I
Oh, it
liked that
was?
change. Yeah, because they talk about how the disease started in a flour factory in, I think it was South Africa, or it was
No, I
somewhere.
knew about that, but I didn't know about the airborne part in
Yeah,
the
well,
game.
that's where the spores come from in the original, and
Okay.
that's why
I
they
mean,
got rid of the spores in the show because it wasn't necessary with the disease being spread through the virus being spread through flour.
okay, yeah, because in the game, they have to put on gas masks on because
Yes.
like when there's a bunch of spores, that's like already
Yeah.
the chance that they'll get infected.
Yeah.
They don't cover their faces. But yeah, those are my thoughts as well. I think is this where we ended now?
Yeah. We can end it here. I've said everything I need to say about the show.
Okay.
Yeah. Despite everything I am saying, I am looking forward to seeing what they do with season 2. Again, I'm in a unique position where I don't care if they change it, and I don't care if they leave it exactly the same. So we'll see what happens when they finally get around to seasons 2 and 3. But as far as I'm concerned, they've gotten past the hard part, which is part 1.
No, no, yeah, absolutely. Only time will tell within the next seasons and their other shows.
Yeah,
So far, the track record of these PlayStation stuff, it's
not great.
no, it's not. We had the Ratchet and Clank movie.
No, which I will say, like, this is easily the best. How do they put it? They like to put it like transmedia productions kind of stuff. Like I think
Yeah.
that's how they word it. As far as these adaptations from video games to TV shows or movies, this I think is by far the best one that PlayStation has ever been a part of. Like,
Oh yeah.
easily, this is the best one.
Well, yeah. Ratchet and Clank was not that great.
No shit,
I did not see that movie. I just played the game.
it was pretty
I-
shit. And then the Heavenly Sword movie they did was pretty shit too.
Heavenly Sword movie.
Yeah,
I don't know about that. I
I'll
don't know
show it
about
to you.
Heavenly Sword.
Yeah, I'll show it to you after we stop recording. But it's not very good.
Okay.
But
And then Uncharted. I mean, I liked it. I know you didn't like it, but for the
yeah,
most part, I know hardcore fans don't like it.
yeah. But this is easily the best thing that they've done as far as this new initiative of adapting the big PlayStation IPs to other mediums.
Mhm. Will they revive Sly Cooper?
I don't know. They were gonna do that movie, but that never happens.
That's
And
what I meant.
honestly,
That's what I meant.
honestly, after the Ratchet and Clank movie, I'm glad that they never did that. Yeah, that's it for us. Thank you so much, Richard, for joining me as
Of
always.
course, always.
And yeah, that's it from us. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all next time. Later.
All right. Bye.